Oh boy. Anybody who knows anything about me knows that I am an atheist and that I used to make atheist content. And, I used to do lots of debates on those people, or with creationists, with other atheists and shit. So I was into that whole thing. I was, one of the first people who witnessed the crazy psycho leftist woke bullshit because Atheism Plus was one of the very first attacks on a community done by a woke mob that we'd seen outside of academia or outside of echo chambers like, say, Reset Era, Tumblr, the old guard of those kind of people. So back then, of course, I used to really like guys, and I still do really like guys like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens. One guy I never liked. I bought one of his books. It was Unreadable Dreck. I'd listen to him talk. I didn't like his debate style. He was always, very meandering and always wanted to beat around the bush in order to steel man something when really he just would just be so verbose and wordy and beat around any subject, whether it was in his favor to do so or not. I found him just almost unwatchable. And that guy was Sam Harris. And Sam Harris has had his own fair share of being attacked by the woke mob. TYT went on a psychotic crusade against this guy back in like 2015, lied about him constantly, libeled him, did everything they could to try to destroy his career, and thankfully TYT is a bunch of toothless pussies who can't do shit. So, of course, that didn't work. Lucky for Sam. But is Sam Harris a good guy? Well, I wouldn't have said he was a bad guy until recently. Now, have I been following him all that much recently? No. Do I know that he's an anti-Trump libtard? Yes. Would I have called him a malignant psychopath for being an anti-Trump libtard? No. He's just ill-informed and around people who have colored his point of view, which does make him a hypocrite since he is part of the cult that have no legitimate reason to hate Trump, but think he's the greatest threat to democracy. And just this week, Sam Harris said something that let us know exactly how much of a threat he thinks Trump is. Sam Harris was in an interview, and when he was answering a question about Trump, he said, or excuse me, about Hunter Biden, basically saying, if you're going to talk about the corruption of Trump and his family, well, look at all this stuff we know for sure about Biden. And Sam Harris brushed that right off and said, basically, first of all, that's Hunter Biden. That's not Joe Biden. That doesn't reflect on him, even though Joe is directly implicated in many of the Hunter Biden scandals, specifically the ones about corruption in Ukraine, involvement with that Ukrainian energy company, the very one that was the subject of Trump's impeachment trial, where they said he insisted upon a quid pro quo because he asked for the information the Ukrainian president would have had on the prosecution of that energy company that Hunter Biden was on the board of. That Hunter Biden's laptop leaks have basically said that part of the money that he was paid, which of course he doesn't even speak the Ukrainian language and has no experience in energy companies and all the companies have ever been on the board of, it's been for one reason: to launder money and to take bribes. And of course, when he says don't forget to include the 10% for the big guy, you know who's getting a good share of those. It's not really that hard to follow the train of logic. But of course, Sam Harris then clarifies how much he means by how irrelevant Hunter Biden is to this question by saying, I wouldn't have cared if Hunter Biden had dead children buried in his basement. It's more important to keep Trump out of office. And then he further clarified by saying, what's more worrying, the one killer or the entire cartel of corruption that we're dealing with here? Well, here's two problems, Sam. Has Trump ever been found guilty of any crime in all of the witch hunts that has been sicked on him in 7 years? The answer? No. Not once. You have no proof of corruption whatsoever. Do we have any convictions of Biden or Hunter Biden? No. Do we have actual evidence? Photographic, video, documented evidence from original sources, okay? Not firsthand, not secondhand, from original sources, from Hunter Biden himself and Joe Biden himself, do we know that there was corruption? Yes. Joe Biden admitted on camera to demanding the firing of the prosecuting attorney of the fucking, I forget, I think it's called Burisma or something. The fucking the energy company that Hunter Biden was on the board of. When Joe Biden admitted on camera, unprompted even, that he called the then Ukrainian president and demanded the firing of that prosecutor and got it and then gloated about it. So again, we have factual evidence that is indisputable of Joe Biden's corruption and his connection to the corruption of his son. We have no evidence of Trump's corruption whatsoever. None. Name one. So, some people, especially on the right, have chosen to attack Sam Harris on principle, saying, okay, you've advocated for the censorship of Donald Trump. You've advocated for treating him differently under the law than other people. That's hypocrisy. How can you, you've made a career out of being quote unquote free speech. You're clearly not. You've made a career about discussing ethics professionally, and you have none. That's not where I'm going to go with this, because I would be potentially opening myself up for accusations of hypocrisy. Darren, you dehumanize the enemy. Darren, you don't think that all of the democratic freedom-loving rules we do have are good. You are just fine with doing some pretty, fascistic things to your enemy. True. But I'm not the one who's pretending to be anti-fascist. I'm not the one who's pretending to have a moral high ground, and I'm not the one who's pretending that Donald Trump doesn't have it, because he does. All right? Now, as for Sam Harris, some people want to say, some people who've only seen the 2-minute clip floating around on Twitter, oh, he's taken out of context. I watched the whole interview. No. He quintuples down on this point, okay? He basically says, I would be willing to do just about anything to keep Alex Jones out of the presidency, and Trump is like Alex Jones, to the extent that I say, okay, what's so bad about Alex Jones? He believes some things that are probably not true. He's broken the news on multiple government corruption scandals and evil fascistic things the government is doing, and he's been doing it for 25 fucking years. Exactly how bad of a guy is he? Are we saying that if our choice is between Alex Jones or a child serial killer, that obviously it's so important to keep Alex Jones out of a position of power that we should vote a crackhead child serial killer and prostitute rapist? Okay, that the second one is true. Okay, first one, actually child rapist maybe, yes, because yes, he's been on Epstein's island. Yes, he's been filmed with some very young-looking prostitutes in Thailand, which is a famous place for child sex tourism, for pedophiles. Famous for it. And he has many videos of him with naked, very young-looking hookers in Thailand. So, again, where's the moral high ground? Where's the ethics? Where's the logic, Sam? How do you come out of this not looking like a deranged psychopath? The answer is you don't. You are clearly a deranged psychopath. And I got through about 10 minutes of deriding you on principle, on the basis of your argument and the logic of your argument versus objective morality. And now we have to say, because you guys have come to expect of me, yes, Sam Harris is an atheist. What ethnicity is he? Come on, dude. Darren, racism is wrong. Yeah, okay. I'm not dealing with an incorrigible prejudice that is not based on any logic or evidence of fact. I'm dealing with what libtards like to call manifest observable behavior. I'm looking at a consistent pattern. And surprise, surprise, here's another guy who's atheist. He's an avowed moral relativist. And is another cautionary tale on denying objective morality. Of course, I have been, on the record multiple times saying morality is not objective, nor is it relative. Morality is consequential. And the only way to tell if your consequential morality is the right or wrong thing to do is to look at it in context. And in context, Sam Harris said if presented with a guy who makes mean tweets and is blustery and is very anti-liberal, he finds that guy so reprehensible that he doesn't believe he deserves civil rights, which are supposed to be, for everybody, unanimous, ubiquitous. He doesn't believe that guy deserves to be in any kind of public office, regardless of the people who want him there, and we are in a voting democracy and a representative republic, and yet regardless of the people who want Trump to represent them. And he thinks Trump is so bad that he would rather have a child murderer or a crackhead or some other kind of degenerate criminal in office than some guy who rubs Sam Harris the wrong way. How are we ever supposed to take Sam Harris seriously? To be honest, I never really did, but I also never really thought he was a bad person. I just thought he was a shitty communicator and a bit of a pseudo-intellectual. Turns out he's far worse than my prejudicial beliefs about him. He is in fact a malignant psychopath. Surprise, surprise. But those people who have become super wealthy just for talking about inane shit and have lived in ivory towers, huffing farts with other people of his kind, like Eric Weinstein, dude, Ben Shapiro, dude, fucking who else was in that group? The intellectual dark web. Joe Rogan, by the way, was the only white person in that group. Anyway, on and on we go. But those people seem to be on our side. But why is it that we keep running into libtards who say psychopathic shit like this and have to walk it back? Why do people like Bill Maher, dude, keep doing this shit? Keep contradicting themselves? The answer is these people don't have any kind of moral compass. They have an egotistical and self-centered idea of what's right and what's wrong, and if they can't get their way, and if they can't explain why they should have their way, they rapidly reduce themselves into, oh, I don't care if we go into a massive recession. I would rather have Joe Biden than Trump. And then here we are in a massive recession that, of course, Bill Maher didn't think would happen. He just said that. Like, what are you going to do? Stab me. Quote from Man Stabbed type kind of fucking stupid foot and mouth comment. And now he has to sit there and answer for that. And now he has to sit there and explain to people, well, this Joe Biden situation is untenable, and get, called out for talking shit about the party. Okay, look, and exactly what kind of person is Joe Biden turned out to be? A guy who purged the National Guard of Trump voters and Trump supporters so that he could be sure that the people that he sends out to violate people's rights on his behalf aren't likely to betray him in any way. A guy who has weaponized the FBI, again, to strip the liberties and to attack people. And again, criticism of the FBI makes you un-American or unpatriotic, or what about this back the blue shit? Aren't you being a hypocrite? FBI are not law enforcement officers. First of all, I'm not pro-cop. Second of all, the FBI are not law enforcement officers. They are special agents of the federal fuck government. They are the Gestapo. Under the best and most benevolent of circumstances, the FBI is still a secret police. Period. So is the CIA, the DHS, and the ATF. And when people are mistrustful of the FBI and call them murderers, it's because Waco. And when people are distrustful of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and call them murderers, it's because of Ruby Ridge. It's because it is a factual thing that they have done. They are murderers, and they are secret police, and they are used to strip people's rights. So when you see a president that you would prefer over Mr. Mean Tweets using the Gestapo in a fascistic manner, so in a non-benevolent manner, and in a manner not in the line with the laws that these organizations are supposed to operate under, that would mean that Biden's not a good guy, objectively. Okay, period. That's not up for debate. That's not subjective. That's an objective fact that Biden has done everything you falsely accused Orange Man of. And yet, we don't care what Biden does, has done, or could have done. We don't care that Epstein and Maxwell get away with everything, and that the records of who they were serving as blackmailers, as purveyors of underage sex trafficking, as child predators and rapists, and Maxwell was one of them. She was raping the girls too. She's bisexual. Everyone's like, oh, Epstein surely committed suicide rather than face his crimes. Well, Maxwell didn't commit suicide, and where is Maxwell going? To a cushy minimum security fucking rinky-dink summer camp prison. Okay? For a not very long period of time, and she doesn't have to reveal her clientele. Epstein was killed because he threatened to talk. Maxwell is alive because she didn't. So, again, in what way is Sam Harris other than a deranged psychopath? The man is not stupid. He is privy to the same information we are. He believes deranged psychopathic liars, and he can't claim ignorance because he just said on camera, I don't care what's true. I don't care who's provably evil. I don't care who murders and rapes children. My way or the highway. This man is not qualified to talk about ethics or logic or objective morality. He is a deranged psychopath. And he's not even willing to admit any kind of mea culpa. Not even a backhanded I'm sorry, but he fucking septupled down on Twitter, okay? He is an incorrigible fucking psychopath. And his prejudices are immune to further evidence. He's not qualified to talk about religion because every single way that he's ever discredited religion is something that he does, knows he does, and is not sorry he does. He is a hypocrite and a malignant psychopath, period. It's not a matter of opinion, it's an objective fact about the man. So even me, in that period where I was an ignorant, atheistic, liberal, progressive, unironic TYT watcher, watch secular talk every week and shit back in 2014, I was that guy. I literally was that guy. Do you know why I'm this guy right now? Pointing out the size of Sam Harris's nose. Why am I this guy? Defending the right wing and saying the only reason why I'm not the biggest fan of Trump is because he's not right wing enough for me. Do you know why I am the way I am now? It's called an honest and open interest in politics. Learning the truth, taking in information from both sides, reading documents, studying world history going back 200 some odd years, learning about why the world is the way it is, why politics are the way they are, why national borders are national borders. I am well versed in this subject. And the day I went, I care enough to know what I'm talking about, is the day I stopped being a liberal. The day I cared enough about people other than myself. When I cared about the greater good, I went further right. And you will too. The rabbit hole is very deep, and the amount of lies, corruption, and dead bodies in that rabbit hole is massive. And that rabbit hole was dug by people like Sam Harris, not people like Donald Trump. That's a fact.